Hey, it is Peace and Harmony. We are zooming in and taking on a great viewer question, and that is to look at the sort of facade of the narcissist and how they come across and sort of put across a public self, oftentimes which betrays or is contradictory to their private self. So I would think in understanding and healing through a relationship that has been fraught with a relationship with someone who is narcissistic, someone who has a pathological sense of self-importance, and coupled with a lack of empathy, oftentimes they like to come off as irreproachable, meaning they do not like to be challenged, questioned, or communicated with at the real, at the authentic, at the truth. So we talk about like people who upset or annoy or who a narcissist will not get along with is someone oftentimes who does not fall for or can sort of see through to the truth, and they don't feel a need to lie to themselves. And so when people are then expressive of their truth and the emperor has no clothes, in other words, the narcissist has been lied to or given into or fallen for the trap. In other words, people have fallen for the polish. They've fallen for the facade. They've catered to the viewpoint of the narcissist, even with evidence of information to the contrary. They are afraid of the narcissist's rage, or they're just sort of, it's easier just to go along than to confront. So, you've got this whole swath of people who then will just go along and not question, just, put up and shut up. They have this philosophy. Unfortunately, that's a very destructive philosophy, in my viewpoint, when it comes to healing, not only yourself, but the world. Sort of what malarkey have you swallowed? Particularly as about your truth and how you have been treated, and then what you really can own in terms of your authentic self, oftentimes, which is then the subject of contention, in making it so difficult to be yourself with a narcissist, meaning you're not able to be your authentic self. That is up for criticism. Oftentimes what a narcissist will consider reproachable, reprehensible, meaning if someone is reproachable, meaning they're going to express disappointment, displeasure for conduct that they are interpreting, air quotes, as blameworthy or needing of amendment. Now that is usually the public persona, the false polish of a narcissist, because remember, they want to be perceived in a specific way, despite evidence to the contrary. They have that entitlement. They have oftentimes a lack of reality testing, or they feel that they are above the law, above the results, above your authentic self. And the truth. They feel that they are not subject to specific rules, laws. This doesn't apply to me. We're just going to violate the boundaries. We're going to be rude. We're going to be condescending. We're going to throw you off. We're going to throw you off balance. And, they'll get away, air quotes, with this rude or toxic behavior because people are afraid to go up against them, to speak their truth. And oftentimes the narcissist, you'll be authentic with them, the truth, the real, and then they'll be like, no, that's not where we want to be perceived. So I think they are very uncomfortable by that real. They don't like to be perceived as normal, human, like everybody else. I think it must feel very scary, fearful, or for some reason they are very much resistive of this experience, which is a B state. a narcissist, I think they so heavily identify with some egoic need, some sort of title, some sort of position, some sort of office, some sort of materialism, some sort of whatever it is, dollar signs in their eyes, awards in their eyes, whatever it is that their ego, so they're still caught up in that game. And then the authentic self doesn't really feel a need to get caught up in that. But if you don't go along with that, then you're then oftentimes going to be targeted as the scapegoat, as the ne'er-do-well, as the one in the wrong, the one who's the problem, the troublemaker. They will use reproach. So here we go with our good old English, our $1 million words, reproach, to express disappointment or displeasure with a person for conduct. In other words, even though this is law abiding, so they're trying to bring you into discredit. And so people then will flinch and flail at this, and then they will then repress or suppress their authentic self because they've been targeted not to be real. They're taught to behave as if, seem as if, put on a happy face. Yeah, some of that, is work and is appropriate, but it's not always good to lie. And if it's not a happiness, then don't put on a happy face. Deal with the real. Not everything has to be bouncing off the walls. You're number one. But the narcissists, see, they have this insatiable need for power and control, so they always want to control the outcome, to be as if. And so other people who are then caught up in that, they are not able to be validated. They're not able to sort of bounce back. Because there's oftentimes a mass of other people who would say, yeah, just go along, just put up and shut up. And so people never then hold them accountable. There is then if there's no accountability, then there's no real communication. If there's not an understanding of terms, things of that nature, then there's going to be a relationship problem. And I would say, namely, the issue with the emperor has no clothes, because the emperor doesn't want to see that he has no clothes. The narcissist does not want to see that they have no clothes. In other words, they want to live the illusory, the grandiose, the fantasy. They're not comfortable with the real. It isn't thrilling enough, even though it has all the goodness and joy and enthusiasm and passion. I would think that they're looking for to be real, true, and to be embraced at their core, because that's what they're always trying to sort of cover up. They put a lot of energy into that. So I would say that, okay, so the problem then, I would say, with the narcissist, and then really an important object of healing, is for you to embrace the limitations of the narcissist and embrace the limitations of yourself, even if they are not embracing of their limitations, even if they're not embracing of your limitations. This is known as boundaries and standards. And I think you really do need to have this in order to feel safe and okay. So the narcissist and the psychopath, they would rather live in the grandiose. They would rather live in the exaggeration. They would rather live in the fantasy, the entitlement, the getting away with things. This rule doesn't apply to me. Let's do this. Let's, in other words, let's violate specific laws, rules, things of this nature that apply to everybody, but it doesn't apply to me. And then, so they just give themselves an out when everyone else has to be accountable. These are your people who, are like this. They don't want to hear the news. You don't have to pay this. You don't have to do this. You don't have to check out by now. You get the special room. You get the special, these are the people who always want a little bit more for nothing. They want more for free. They want to see what they can get, what they, and they don't, they don't have a problem with who they elbow, who they walk over, who they hurt, whose emotions that they're not validating. in the process. That is their lack of empathy in play. That's what lack of empathy looks like. And so you have to understand that if you have then been swept up into this for some time during the love bombing, which means you went along with the charades, you went along, and then you realize, you know what, that is not appropriate. I need to be authentic. I need to embrace my authentic self. Even if your authentic self will not, and I think cannot, be embraced by the narcissist. This makes them too fearful. They feel too delicate. They don't feel that the world will acknowledge and validate them for some sort of superiority. And they want to sort of belong, in my viewpoint, to something small, which is just only themselves, versus, belonging to something larger, which is oftentimes relationships, authentic relationships. So they will oftentimes push away and be very resistive and very angered by real relationships, the real deal. This, this and this, you might bring something up, and they will be very snub you off. That doesn't happen. We're not talking about that. That's off limits. That's wrong. These are, just textbook resistive. And so people then will miss out on feeling accepted, heard, validated. This is the cause that creates the effect. So if you understand that, that's a real limitation and a real, you don't even have to call it a flaw. You can just say it's a limitation of this type of individual. And if you can see that for what it is and not cater to the narcissist has no clothes, the emperor has no clothes. In other words, the narcissist will come from that, almighty, just sort of white tower, or, come up from their perspective of superiority. Even if they're not, they're coming from that perspective. And to make others a matter of reproach. So it's very important to understand they will try to bring others to discredit, even though they have a reality. It might not be popular. It might not make the narcissist look good. It might not make the psychopath look good. But really, above all else, for the narcissist and the psychopath, is they want to look good, whatever that means for them. And usually, sort of seasoned in a tendril in, is that need to be superior. So, in other words, if they are seen for the real, this is when you get their bad side. This is when you get the Dr. Jekyll and Hyde. This is when you get the ugly. And usually the ugly will be to bring others to discredit. In other words, the blame. Other people are all of a sudden roped into the problem. Whether it's an individual or whatever, the narcissist can use individuals, family systems. This was their fault. This is the community's fault. This is my race's fault. They'll always sort of put it off, and it just gives them an automatic out. Entitlement. And until other people who are authentic, and then sort of get a whiff of reality, a whiff of sort of a real sense that something is awry, that this is, very painful, and it doesn't need to be so. It's when you're able to realize that this is part of their mechanism. Is that asymmetry? Is that imbalance? Their need to be viewed and treated, even as if they are superior or better than, that for some reason, they come up and they deserve put me to the front of the line, and it's like, well, we've got 20 people. Yeah, but me, elbow, elbow, loud, 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 yell, 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 push, push, push. They'll use these whatever tactics. And so realize that even though maybe a lot of people have gone along with it, it's easier, to put up and shut up. I would say and then also part of this, is to look at and say, to what degree do you not need to concede, give in, or cave in by default? That it's okay to own your truth. It's okay to see the limitations in the narcissist, even if this might cause you fear. Remember that the narcissist and the psychopath, they sort of have this sort of need to be beyond sort of reproach, beyond question, beyond sort of discussion, especially of things like health, things like, are you okay? Things like, how, they're sick and they don't want to be seen. So they don't like to appear as normal, human. I think for them, this is very uncomfortable. Even though that's sort of the truth that would set you free. In this case, but they will grab onto that need at all costs, like they're clinging onto, the last TV that was on sale at a Walmart. They're just like, and they will fight it to the bitter end. And you might say, you know what, I don't want that TV. I don't want what you're trying to grab onto. I don't want to not embrace my authentic self, because it's very difficult to simultaneously embrace your joy and live a lie. I think it's very difficult to simultaneously do these things. And to growing amounts, you will realize this in either periods of time that you spend or conversations that you say, oh, okay, I realize how I was not able to communicate, and now it is okay and safe for me to communicate with, meaning boundaries and standards. And if you have that authentically, which means, you are okay and safe, and in the okay, I would say even in the larger sense, like you will be supported. You don't have to be afraid for not living a lie or saying, yeah, the emperor has no clothes. Like, you don't have to live that lie. Oftentimes, though, people are reinforced and rewarded for living the lie. The emperor, would, and because the narcissist does not want to embrace this limitation, and especially in others, and then it will make you seem inferior for being yourself. You might have a different skill. You might have a different emphasis. You might have a different tone of voice. You might have a different color skin. Your hair might be a different length. Whatever it is, you might have long fingernails. I don't know, whatever it is, but for some reason, the narcissist, only wants to be viewed as that polish. And there's, people, are real. They do, there's a hair out of place. There's a, whatever. There's a T that didn't get crossed, but it's still a T. In other words, realize that this is their tactic and their tools to reduce others. And then if you buy into the inferiority, then you're going to have that suffering, that pain, and you're going to wonder why it's difficult for you to live a vibrant or healthy life that's oftentimes typified by embracing your limitations. If you go, wow, I'm not going to violate that boundary. I feel better now. Then you feel empowered. But if that is not rewarded by the whole swath of people or the narcissist tribe or clan or whatever it is that you find yourself, because I know a lot of viewers, there's a lot of other, what they call in the industry as flying monkeys, which means the other people are also drinking the narcissist or the psychopath Kool-Aid. And you don't want to drink the Kool-Aid. That is okay. Don't worry about it. If you like to know, that is okay, have permission and know it's okay now. Realize that you can be the number one. You can be the one. Then to heal, I would say, is to, and just sort of getting back, it's okay to embrace the limitations of the narcissist. Even though they want to resist this, they do have limitations. The narcissist oftentimes, though, this is what they are trying to resist. They are trying to resist that they have limitations, that they're not always the front man. They're not always the front girl. They're not always the this. They're not always... So oftentimes they're clinging to that need for power and control, where a lot of people are okay to give it up. I'm okay to give up power. I'm okay to give up control. I'm okay to give up this title. I'm okay to give up this office. I'm okay to give up this car. This car does not define me. This office does not define me. This lie does not define me. So realize that oftentimes that lie is oftentimes for a lot of people what they would consider a saving grace, especially in a lot of dysfunctional systems. So in a lot of dysfunctional systems, there's often a hero that needs to be identified and elevated for the whole system, if they're not functional, to sort of put a lifeline on. So for example, the narcissist will then say, well, this person, this one in the family, this one in the office, this one in the community, this one in the office. Meaning that we are okay because this person is. And that is a flawed thinking. That is defense mechanism. That is based out of fear. And this is very interesting. And this is very much I would say, an adaptation of dysfunctional sort of fear-based systems. When they need to cling to, identify and cling to one who is the superior. And if they can continue and then validate that person, but it's often to your discredit, that you must simultaneously discredit yourself while supporting the narcissist. That is problematic. That becomes a very bad emotional behavior, thought form, outcome for other people. It'll send you really into a wrong direction, disempowered, and not really sort of being your best. It'll lead you more into disorganization, suffering, and chaos, sort of regression. You won't feel that you're sort of growing in your truth because you're really afraid to acknowledge and validate it, which oftentimes is acknowledging and validating your own greatness. This oftentimes is like a forbidden fruit for the narcissist or the psychopath, for you to embrace your greatness. So why has your okayness been made forbidden, prohibited, wrong? I mean, explore that, but don't overanalyze things, because you need to stop overanalyzing and also sort of realize this and then relate to people. So a word to the wise then for this message here. It's a lot. Is to realize it's okay to be realistic about a narcissist or a psychopath. It's okay that you don't need to continue to make others better than or above you, that you can embrace your greatness, that you don't need to save yourself by elevating another. I mean, do you see what I'm saying? So in other words, you can embrace your limitations and then simultaneously elevate yourself. You can embrace the limitations of the narcissist and simultaneously embrace reality and elevate and transcend and become empowered, because you're seeing what is accurate, what is real, what is true. And rather than denying, pushing away, or resisting, do you understand what that is? And, this really is, I would say, significant towards liberating and being able to move through the hurt and sort of being able to say, hey, I'm okay, don't worry about it, and then being able to move on because of this. This is your buddy, Peace and Harmony. I hope these videos, tools, and discussions do help. Please share, please subscribe, and please donate and give back to the channel if this has been helpful. We really do appreciate your feedback, your comments, and then sharing your experiences and being supportive of others, because that's part of it, is being able to share your experiences and getting validation sort of, and just putting it out there to be discussed.